Hey guys, it's Phil coming back at you with another video. Today, I'm back. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Practicing self-care, doing the next right thing, not letting one thought, one situation, one person take them outside of what they know to be true. And hopefully you guys get the time to spend some time with the people that are important to you. Happy Easter to everybody. I know it's not quite that time yet, but this is a holiday that really means a lot to me because it means that we all get to spend time with one another and we all get to be around everybody and we all get to reminisce and actually just think about what lessons and blessings we have in our life. And I just hope that you get that opportunity, even if you don't have people that are still around for you, but make sure that you spend time with people that mean a lot to you because you never know when that's gone. So that's my biggest encouragement today, is that make sure that you stay true to what you know, but make sure that you're spending time with the people that you need to, and just keep building yourself up and not letting anything take you outside of what you know to be true. I know it's been a decent amount of time, but I've had a lot of stuff go on personally and a lot of things going on. And in that interim time, a bunch of people have passed their exams. I'm so blown away by this because I didn't even believe it when I saw of 238 people have passed their exams since the last time that I read people's names off. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys that give me this opportunity, that listen to me, that look up to me, or even share my name, even if it's positive or negative. It just is crazy because when I first started doing this, I never imagined that we'd get here. So from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. And the people that passed are as follows: Brenda M., Angela M., Ajita H., Nikki B., Kaylee M., Fred K., Jamina L., Angelica J., Allie W., Diamond GR, Sarah G., Geneva K., Stephen D., Rachel H., Tanisha B., Veronica A., Sean T. C., Paige M., Louis B., Tori S., Mira at T., Margit O., Leah R.P., Kashana C., Denise C., Lauren B., Sherry, Alyssa R., Leah D., Moji, Justin G., Nirmal S., CC, Michelle R., Marcella P., Julia L., Kristen N., Leah R.P., Andrea S., Tika D., Jessica L., ZS, Joshua L., Judy B., Nicole C., Kristen G., Deandra P., Deborah A., Molly T., FT, Ryan M., Amanda B., Brandy O., Amina C., Vanessa K., Alyssa G., Samantha C., Annie M., Turgigas T., Noquisha P., Savannah W., Susanna H., Hillary H., Julie T., Corinne S., Gina L., Amy G., Quan F., Emily C., Lily L., Emelisa T., Emily L., Lana H., Patience O., Brian M., Candace R., Laura S., Jenny R., Myrna S., Crystal G., Alicia W., Jim F., Matthew F., Alicia E., Nicole W., Justine M., Monifa M., John F., Ray F., Tay M., Juliana G., Bradley L., Ann S., Grace F., Wendy B., Hope K., Michelle H., Alyssa R., Arlene G., London T., Diane H., Capricia L., Jenny E., Sean J., Caitlin W., Rochelle A., Jim D., Jocelyn F., Adeline H., Tara S., Penny T., Gabriella F., Megan H., Linda K., Holly G., Charlene S., Catherine H., Lucy, Latana S., Carmen C., Angel M., Karine S., Alex H., Brianna L., Aaron W.C., Alicia T., Amanda H., Marissa C., Carlisa D., Lourdes R., Tab G., Lauren Q., Casey W., Laura D., Anna P., Wendy M., Nathan D., Kelsey T., Kim C., Danielle B., Andrew D., Lindsay A., Ashley W., Ashley B., Veronica E., Edward B., Carolina G., Nicole P., Levon P., Jessica P, Erica T, Tony V, Kimberly F, Sarah F, Fallon D, Angie T, Kayla R, Monique R, Terilyn L, Hannah F, Shauna G, Tiffany S, Jasmine H, Linda T, Tay E, Danielle H, Angel T, Kate H, Kimberly C, Sidiana O, Jessica H, Alicia L, Sam T, Samira R, Julie B, Matthew H, Aaliyah A, Alana K, Essence J, Jessica L, Barb M, Tiffany J, KH, Asha W, Ann L, Barb M, Cynthia K, Judith L, Julia B, Beverly F, Angel C, Amanda C, Aisha J, Caitlin B, Soul Angel B, Benjamin B, Brody L, Laura H, Leah W, Gina N, Nick R, Nancy H, Sean A, Rhonda C, Caroline F, Andrew Q, Jan C, JS, Teresa V, Ben A, Savannah K, Danielle W, Timothy S, Nick Z, Joey P, Allie H, Elizabeth E, Michelle J, Brooke M, A, Amanda P, Sophie L, Jacqueline O, Angela H, Chrissy E, Christy W, Paula V, Kelly W, Sarah M, Jody M, Gina M, Sharon W, Lindsay S, Stephanie S.K, Jordan F, Jennifer M, Courtney S, and Stephanie H. So excited, man. And I apologize for those that had passed and I hadn't read your name off yet, but don't think I wasn't thinking about you guys, because when I was doing this list, I was like, man, you've been slipping. You haven't really been sharing the positivity that you need to, and that's the level that I'm on right now. Is I'm just reflecting on what are the things that are important to me and what are the things that I need to dedicate. So if you passed your exam and you want to share it with me, the easiest way to do that is send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. I'll give you a shout out. And like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single person that listens to my videos, comes to the study groups, does the individual tutoring, does the one-day course, just even shares my name to anybody, because at the end of the day, I never imagined that we would have this big of a community at the Fill in the Gaps community, man, because without you guys, there's not me. So a lot of people on that list were like, man, Phil, I don't think I should be taking this, man. I don't think that this is meant for me, or I should change my career, or man, this person's doubting me, or man, I was doing other programs and I wasn't get the results that I wanted to. So my biggest push today is do what you think is right. Do what is necessary for you. Do what you think is best and let go of the rest, because a lot of times we let people in our minds, we let people take our time, and we let people guide us in a way that we are afraid to go down, and we have that feeling in our stomachs. We're like, man, this isn't right for me. But we let them take control anyway, because it's easier for people to tell us what to do and it not go right and us blame them than us to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I did everything that I could and it still didn't amount to what I thought it would, but that doesn't mean that I'm gone or that I'm done. And if you're like, Phil, what is the easiest way to rep and rock with you? The easiest way to do that is to send my Sunday study groups. The Sunday study groups start at 7 p.m. Eastern time and they go until they kick us out. And I don't really give an end length there, because if you've come to my Sunday study groups, I guess wrong every time. I think, man, this is only going to be a 3.5 hour group, or man, this group's only going to be 4 hours. And some of the groups end up being 5.5 hours, because I want to make sure that I give as much information, but also give you the toughest practice questions that I can possibly give you guys, as well as at the end of all the Sunday study groups, there is a question and answer segment where you can directly interact with me and identify where you're at, what would be helpful, and how I can guide you in the right direction and cut all the noise out. And if you're like, man, Phil, what are the next Sunday study groups? So the next Sunday study groups are as follows. 417 practice questions. I know it is a holiday, but before I even get into the details, if you're not able to attend any of these study groups live, it's 100% to receive the recording and the materials after the session. All you have to do is register for the session, because it will add your name to the email list, and then you'll get the materials Monday morning after the session. So the practice question session is going to be going over the different types of questions that could be on the exam, the 5-step process that I recommend people to utilize on every single question to go into the exam to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done, tips that I find most helpful in that segment of the session. If you are not acquainted to my style or my videos, is going to be some energy and motivation and tips that you can practically take into the exam with you. So if you're expecting that we're going to be going over practice questions this entire session time, you're going to be kind of let down because I want to make sure that you're not just able to break down the questions, but you're able to actually do the most important part of the exam, which is adhere to your mental and where you are at. And when your back is against the wall, how can you throw your hands up to fight versus throw your hands to give up and run away from where you want to go. The next one after that is 424, Human Developmental Theory. So going over Erickson's, Piaget, and Kohlberg, as well as practice questions related to those. 5-1, Ethics. And this session tends to be the longest one that I do, besides the one-day course, because ethics is where I go through the code of ethics, line by line, different ways that you can conceptualize it, not giving you buzzwords, not giving you shortcuts, but how can you actually conceptualize the gray within the code of ethics? Because I hear it all the time, man, Phil, I think I'm an ethical social worker. On the exam, it says I'm not adherent to the ethics. Well, ethics is the grayest and most vague thing that you can possibly see. So you have to know the different intricacies of what one detail in a question can change everything. So don't just be like, oh yeah, I totally know the code of ethics, because the exam doesn't care if you know it, and knows if you can apply it and actually do what you need to do with and for those situations. And then 5-8, Maslow's stages of grief and conditioning. So going through the different concepts as well as practice questions related to those. 5-15, Freudian theory. So we're going over psychosexual stages of development, psychoanalytic, the level of the mind. We're going over id, ego, superego, and then the defense mechanisms, examples related to those, and then practice questions to tie it all together. 522, DSM-5 children, so going over different children disorders and diagnosis, as well as questions related to those. And then 529, DSM-5 adults, so going over the personality disorders, schizophrenia spectrum, the differences between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorder, the medications, and then questions related to those. And as I said before, if you're not able to attend the sessions live, that's 100% okay. Just send me an email or register for the session live, because when you register, it sends you the recording and the material. So if you're like, man, I'm not able to stay the whole time, or man, I'm not able to attend at all, just register for the session and it'll send you the recording and the materials after the session. If you have any question related to those, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. I also do still offer individual tutoring. So if you're interested in working with me directly, the easiest way to be able to do that is go to my calendar. But you want to make sure that you plan ahead, because my calendar tends to book out 3 to 4 weeks in advance, and I feel awful when people reach out and say like, man, I totally want assistance from you, but I really can't help out. I do have a cancellation list, so if you want to be added to that, you can send me an email at berda24@gmail.com, as well as the next one-day course is going to be on April 30th, so at the tail end of the month. And the one-day course is the most successful thing that I've ever developed, because it gives you, one, the most amount of time directly with me, but two, also gives you a full picture of what are things that you need to avoid or what are things that you need to refine on, as well as walks you through how not to just go with the buzzwords, not go with the shortcuts, but actually be able to break down difficult questions. Because I hear all the time, man, Phil, I've been doing this one program, or I'm doing this other program, or I'm doing this other set of questions, and then I start doing some of your questions and I'm getting them all wrong. What's the problem? Should I reschedule? You shouldn't reschedule. You just have to understand why you're getting the things wrong. And sometimes not every question is created equally. So if you're repping and rocking with questions and running through them, and then you start meeting resistance, don't fight against the resistance. Embrace the resistance and say, what are the things that I need to take from this experience? And then take it into the exam, versus, all right, I have a backpack full of answers because I've been memorizing, or I've been word associating. I've been jumping like a cat that got squirted with water. I'm going with buzzwords, but I'm not a bee. I'm getting stung because I keep getting hurt in the exam. The one-day course is something that's going to clear up a lot of that for you. So if you're struggling to break down the questions, or if you're struggling to understand where you need to go with your exam preparation, the one-day course is the easiest way to be able to do that. And as I stated, it's on April 30th. It starts at 11 a.m. Eastern time until they kick us out Eastern time, because the last one-day course was the longest one that I've ever done, and that one ended at like 1:30 or 2 a.m. And I'm not joking. I want to give as much as I possibly can to you guys. So I'm not somebody that's looking at the watch that's like, man, it's been X amount of time. It's been X amount of time, so I'm ready to get out of here. No, I give you a starting time, but I don't give you an ending time, because I want you to actually be successful. I don't want to just take something from you. I want to make sure that you grab anything that you possibly can from these sessions. In an overview of what the one-day course is going to look like, tips I find most helpful for people to go into the exam to kick it directly in the chest, most common reasons why people fail the exam, breaking down a handful of topics, subpoena versus court order, operant conditioning. We're going to be going over when you should refer versus when you should seek supervision. We'll be going over the personality disorders, the schizophrenia spectrum, the differences between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorder. We'll be going over the medications, and then we'll go over the 5-step process that I recommend people to utilize to go into the exam to kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. We'll be going over the acronym and then going through 25 practice questions to allow for you not to memorize, not to just feel good, but to actually be able to recognize and apply and understand what is going on within the question versus I'm doing great. It's people normally go into that session and get knocked down because they're like, oh my God, I got more wrong than I wanted to. But the mission is not to get things right. The mission is to understand and be able to decipher and replicate what you're doing outside of the exam, inside of the exam. So don't get so married to the results, but get married to the process, because the only way to progress is to go through the process over and over and over and over. And just like with the Sunday study groups, if you're not able to attend the one-day course live, or if you're not able to stay the entire time, it's 100% possible to receive the recording as well as the materials. And if you're like, Phil, my exam is before April 30th, it's 100% possible to get the recording as well as the materials from the previous one-day course that I did. And if you want any information related to those, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. As well as for those that do not know, Audible is still continued to partner with me on my YouTube videos and my podcast. So if you want to support me as well as support them, go to my Audible affiliate link, www.audibletrial.com/fill-in-the-gaps. Sign up for the 30-day free trial, because the 30-day free trial is the easy way for you to support me. It costs you absolutely nothing. And for those that do not know what Audible is an easy way for you to get information on the go. So if you're busy just like me and you still want to become the best possible version of yourself, Audible is an easy way to get you access on the move and on the go and get you in the groove. So if you want to support me as well as support them, go to my Audible affiliate link at audibletrial.com/fill-in-the-gaps. And if you're like, Phil, I don't want to type all that in, go to the link down below in the description. It'll have the Sunday study group registration, the one-day course registration, as well as the Audible affiliate link. And if you're like, man, I really want to rep and rock with you, but I'm not sure what free book I should get, there are a couple that I would recommend. The Alchemist, The Archer, Traumatized, and Outliers. Each have different lessons that you can utilize, not just in your professional life, but personal life, to help you progress to that next level and not just feel like you're alone within whatever process that you are particularly doing. As well as, if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit the like button down below, because it allows for other amazing social workers just like you to be able to find my videos as well. And if you are finding my videos as well as what I'm doing helpful, please leave a comment down below, because I don't know if you realize it, but I read every single comment. And I know the more positive people can be, the easier it is for other individuals to feel positive as well, because you never know what somebody's going through. You never know what somebody's experiencing. You never know what is going on. So the more positivity that you can put out in your life, the more positivity you tend to receive within your life. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button down below, hit the bell notification next to it, because it will give you an email every time I upload a video. And like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. I'm going to drop some things that I have on my mind. And as you noticed by the title, yes, we're going to be going through practice questions. That's going to be kind of at the tail end. But I want to make sure that I get everything out, because like I said, I haven't put out a video in a while. But people are still struggling. People are still going through things. And I want to share some thoughts that I have, because I hear it all the time. For those that have been repping and rocking with me and tutoring the study groups, and even the one-day courses, I appreciate you guys, because even though I haven't been putting out as much content, you guys are still coming and saying like, man, you're really helping me in my life. And that's helpful for me, because at the end of the day, like I said, you never know what somebody's going through. Like I said, I have a lot of stuff going on in my personal life and I don't really share that a whole lot with everybody, but just know that, man, we're all going through something, man. And I definitely don't want you to be feeling alone. I don't want you to feel like, man, nobody ever struggles through anything, or man, everybody is succeeding, everybody's striving and driving in the ways that they need to at that given moment. So my goal for you, if you're listening to this and you got to this point, and if you're like, man, I don't want to hear what you got to say, I just want to see your practice questions, skip past this, please, honestly. I want to help everybody, but I know there's a group of people out there that they really look forward to the things that I got to say. So if you're new to me, skip to the end if you don't really want to hear what I got to say, because I'm going to be doing practice questions and laying the heat, but I definitely got a couple things on my mind that I want to get out to everybody. So a lot of things that I've been reflecting on is people are telling me all the time, Phil, I don't want to keep doing the things that I'm going through. I don't want to have to take this exam again. I've been using this program. I've been using that program. I've been using this program. Man, people in my life don't understand, or my boss, or all these people are telling me the things that I should be doing. My biggest encouragement every time is like, what are you doing this for? Like, why do you even want to do this? And a lot of people are like, man, I just want better money and better job. It's like, it has to be deeper than that, because you can always get money. You can always get a job. But if you don't have a reason for why you're doing the things that you're doing, you're going to give up. It's going to be easy for you to be like, man, I'm good. I'm fine. But everything that you do leads to something. So that's why every time that somebody's telling me like, man, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do this, and it's like, why do it? Nobody should be putting themselves through things that they don't actually want to do. It's not by mistake. You need to just randomly be like, blah, I'm going to just walk through life and just go through the motions, because when you're in your emotions, you're going through the motions. But when you're focusing on the facts, it's going to inform how you act. So don't just be like, it's a mistake, or I hope this happens. We can have hope and we can have faith, but at the end of the day, you can't just lie and tell yourself, as long as I put it out in the universe, or as long as I speak it into existence. The missing component in that equation is you have to actually analyze the facts and inform the way that you act. You can't just walk through life and be like, things will happen to me, I suppose. No, you have to identify what you want, how you can get there, what's needed, what's not needed. But way too many people think that they have to rep and rock with everybody, and they're blaming themselves versus blaming the sources that they're getting their energy from. Because not all energy is good energy. Not all things that you experience are going to be positive, yet you have to learn something from everything. You have to learn something from everything that you go through, whether it is something that you don't understand at the moment, whether it's something super negative and you're not even really sure where you should be going, or what you actually need to be doing. You have to get a lesson and a blessing out of everything. But if you look at the word learn, if we take out the L, because we're not taking losses anymore, we have to take the losses out of the equation. Not that we're not going to be reflecting on the things that we didn't think would go this way, but when we look at something we're learning, we have to take the losses away, because way too many times people focus 100% on their losses and they forget the things that they're getting out of the situation. They forget the blessings and lessons and opportunities and situations and skills and abilities and talents that they're developing while they're doing those things. Because if you look at the rest of the word, it says earn. Because what did you earn from this situation? Because if you're just walking through life being like, man, things just happen to everybody, so I'm just going to take it like it comes. No, you have to analyze and do and inform the best decision. You can't just walk through and be like, man, this is what I'm going to do. But you need to stop focusing on the losses and start focusing on the gains and what you earned. Because as we go through life, we all learn from experiences. Everybody, how I'm doing this, how you're doing what you're doing, how you're sitting, how you're listening. We all had to learn how to do what we're doing. But the problem is that not everybody earns from those situations. Because if you perceive something to be a loss, or you perceive something to be super negative, you may never be able to identify or get out of your situation, because you've been shown the opportunities and the gifts and the things that you have to do, but it doesn't seem convenient and it doesn't seem comfortable, so you're running from it. You're running from your own success. You're running from the people that you need to be walking up to. So for example, people be going through my questions, they're like, man, these are so hard, man, screw Phil. But it's only once people fail the test do they say like, man, I need these hard questions, because the exam isn't just going to be these basic questions that other people are showing to you. And even though it feels good, it feels great, but you're not earning something from it. You're just focusing on what you think has to be in the situation versus what are the actual facts and the things that you need in your life. So do not focus on your losses, or you will always be where you started. If you only focus on what is happening to you, you will never see the vision and the mission and the path that you are being sent on. You will never be able to see it, because you're not going to see or solve problems that you aren't willing to see or that you aren't willing to solve. But way too many people are looking at the situation like, man, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Like, what's going on in this situation? How is this even leading to anything? You got to dig deeper, because the only way that you are actually going to establish roots is if you go into the dirt and get in that moment. So if you're like listening to this and you're like, man, I've failed the test before, Phil. Yes, you have. Yet, you only fail when you stop, but if you do not look at what you did, you will never understand what you need to do differently. Because at the end of the day, sometimes people don't need to change anything. They just have to change their internal processing and their view of their situation. So if you're failing by a couple of points, don't be like, man, I got to blow up the whole house and start over. You just have to build a better base. You just have to dig deeper and dig your roots in. Because when you go through things and when you are deeply rooted inside of who you are, nobody can take anything from you. But way too many people just walk through and let their previous successes dictate their future success. But that's not how it works. You can't just be like, man, back in the day. Well, it's not that day anymore. It's your day to day to make it the best that it can possibly be. And it doesn't mean that you can't improve, but you don't have to say, I have to prove something to myself because of what they say. I don't have to do this because of this. I have to do because I hear all the time, man, they say to go with first, next, best, most. They say to go with the buzzwords. This person told me that I should drink honey before the test. This person over here is telling me like I should read this book, but I don't learn by reading, but I'm just going to appease them and be like, you know what? I got this book today. You see me? I'm studying, but you haven't picked the book up because it's not how you learn. You're not earning anything from it. You're actually focusing on what they're doing, and they're passing the test, and you're looking at yourself and saying, I'm doing the same thing that they are, but I'm not getting the same success. Well, guess what? They have a different life. They have a different mind. They have a different mission, so you have to stay focused on yours, because if you're looking at somebody else's mission, and you're missing the things that you could do in your situation. Because the word mission, you are missing what you need to be in on. You're missing what you need to be in on. Because at the end of the day, you have to do the necessary. And the necessary isn't cute. The necessary isn't beautiful. The necessary isn't awesome. But the necessary is going to aid you in the missions that you have to go on. Because at the end of the day, something I've been thinking about is you have to go back to where you started. You have to identify what happened. How did I get here? Because it wasn't just by happenstance. It didn't just be like you woke up one day and just got here. But do the necessary, because it will carry you through the tough times. Do things with arrogance. And at first it will make you dance. You're like, woo, this is great. I'm following them. I'm having a party. I'm in the club. I'm feeling great. I'm doing all the things that I need to be doing, I think, but I'm doing it for them, not me. I know I shouldn't be doing those things. I know I shouldn't be buying all these things. I know I shouldn't be doing what they are telling me to do, but I am so afraid to do what I think that I would rather do what they tell me to do, blame them, but intrinsically blame myself because I didn't trust myself to do what I needed to do at that moment. So that's what I say. When you do things with arrogance, at first you're going to dance. It's going to feel great. You're going to feel high on yourself like, I'm the greatest that's ever done it. But everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Because over time, arrogance will cause errors and cause tough times. That's it. You want to weather the storm? You got to get prepared for the storm. You want to go into the exam and destroy it? You have to prepare as if you're going into the test. And I hear it all the time, man. Phil, this is an easy question. I don't even got to read the other answers. How are you going to say that? How are you going to half read something, or how are you going to assume something on something so important? That'd be like, all right, I'm going to go and buy a house, but I don't even have to look at the house. I'm just going to sign the line because I trust everybody. You got to be more focused on what you need, honestly. Because if you don't do the necessary, it's easy to neglect it. It's easy to neglect the things that aren't beautiful. It's easy to neglect the things that are tough. It's easy to neglect the things that make you feel uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, it's the tough times. It's the tough moments. It's all the things that you need to be doing that are going to lead you to where you want to go, honestly. And that's why I was like, man, you got to do a video. You got to do something today. Not that I was beating up on myself, but I was like, man, there are people out there struggling. There are people out there beating up on themselves. There are programs out there that are beating down on your people. What are you doing? Yeah, you have stuff going on. Yeah, you're busy. Yeah, you're stressed. Yeah, you're doing this. But why did you start doing this? Why did you start doing this? And I had to think. I was like, man, why did I start doing this? But I was like, no. You know why you started doing this? You wanted to teach. You wanted to help people. You wanted to build people up. But more importantly, you wanted to make sure that if anybody in your life was struggling, they could just click on a video and say like, man, everything that we did paid off. Everything that we did. And like I was saying, I'm going through stuff, man. I got a lot of stuff. And I'm not like, man, poor me. But it's why I started. It's why I started doing this. Honestly. Because this week, man, I just got a call with like my mom's like, man, stuff's not going right for me. Things aren't as good as it should be. I'm not feeling right. And if you know, man, that's not good. Why? My mom's got cancer. So how am I going to sit back here chilling like everything is comfortable and great when you first started recording videos because you wanted her to have something she could listen to? You wanted her to never feel like she didn't do the right things. So how are you going to let your situation stop that? Like, yeah, you're busy, but what if your time never gets to get it out because that time is ended? Because that I said at the beginning of the video, we never know when our time is over. So anything that you do from this point forward is as if you never had an opportunity to show the people that you wanted to, that you have to do it anyway. You got to show up. You got to do what you think is right. You have to build yourself in this moment of everything is a priority, but most people only prioritize the things that they think are helpful or think important once the opportunities or situations are gone. 100%. Like I said, that's what was on my head. It was like, man, why'd you start doing this? It wasn't to help a bunch of people. Because in my first couple of videos, I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, man, you ain't helping nobody. And it was reinforced. It was like, man, you suck. But now it's like, there are people that are counting on you. There are people that are looking at these videos and saying, man, I need this today. Like, I need these words to go into my test. So that's why I said, if this isn't your stroke, this isn't what you like, go ahead, skip ahead. I can teach you how to destroy the exam. But I don't want you to just destroy the exam and destroy the rest of your life. Because way too many people focus on the unnecessary things. They focus on the little things, but they are distracted from the big picture. And then once they don't get the result that they want, all that guilt and shame comes out. So find balance. Find what's important to you. Never stop. Never let anything distract you of why you first started doing this. So for example, somebody emailed me after they attended the last one-day course because like I said, I went in heavy during that course. And that person emailed me. It was like, man, what you said during that course, it made me think about my life and how I was homeless and how I was sleeping outside, how I was sleeping under a bridge. And it wasn't until a social worker came to me and was like, man, I think you could do something with your life. Did I actually do something? But they forgot their why. They let this test them, and they gave up. They wanted to give up. But the big thing that they can take from it is you have a story, but your story can bring glory or it can bring shame and guilt of everything that you've been through. So that's what I'm saying is do not let one thought, one situation, one person, or anything in your life make you focus only on the losses. Focus on the things that you can earn and never let what you are afraid of prevent you from doing something. Don't let what you're going through prevent you from going to the goals that you want to. But way too many times people are like, man, I'm going to talk about all the losses or I'm going to talk about negative about this exam because I think that's what is expected of me, or man, I've never failed anything in my life before and this exam is making me question my identity. How can one event and one experience make you feel like you don't belong in a position that you've worked so hard for? You blazed the trail. You've created the path. You've done everything right up to this moment. So why let one thought, one situation, one event, or anything take you outside of what you know to be true? Because I'm not the only body that's going through somebody. I'm not the only thing that's going through something. But the only thing that you have to do is be honest. You have to reflect on it. You have to focus on it. Because it wasn't comfortable for me to be like, man, this week isn't great because of this. I could have hid. I could have hid behind it and been like, man, everything is great. Everything's fine. But it's like, no, man, you got to feel what you're feeling. It sucks. It sucks to not be able to do something for somebody that you care so much about and that you did something for. And nothing may not pay out from it. And what I mean by that, it's not like tit for tat, but it's like, man, we can only do the best that we can during this day. We can't worry. We can't stress because when we do those things, we create and manifest situations that are taken away from our blessings and lessons in the moment. We're taken away from the blessings and lessons that we can get from a moment because it's not what we think it should look like. We want it to look a certain way and we want it to feel a certain way, but at the end of the day, we don't have control over that, so you have to control the controllables. You have to control how you talk to yourself. You have to control how you conduct yourself. You have to control how you do everything in every aspect of your life. Doesn't mean that you have to be hyper-focused on anything. All you have to do is be mindful, identify what you're trying to do, give yourself grace to run the race and do everything that you need to at that given moment, and do the necessary. Because if something is new to you, you have to do the necessary steps to make sure you're not putting yourself into a dangerous situation. Like if you're learning how to drive a car, you're not just going to slam 70 on the road and be like, I'm driving. No, you're going to lose control and hurt somebody. So if you're doing that with your preparations or you're doing that with any opportunity, don't lose the energy you have when you first wanted to do it just because you're meeting adversity, just because it's not what you want it to look like, not just because it's not feeling how you wanted it to do, because the only way that you get to where you want to go is going through the steps. You have to identify what are the things that are going well, what are the things that aren't going well, and how are you measuring yourself? Because the last thing that I'll say before we get into the questions is I was tutoring somebody and they're like, man, Phil, I don't think I'm ready for my test. I was like, what are you talking about? What makes you feel like you're not ready? Because they were like, lately I haven't been feeling ready. What changed? Like what changed in your life that makes you just now feel like you're not ready? But when we boil it down in a pot, they looked at me and was like, man, Phil, because I'm not you. I'm not doing it the way that you want me to do it. I don't have a way that I want anybody to do it. I want you to be 100% you and go into the exam and represent yourself. So if you're having a measure that you're putting yourself up to, but it's not actually realistic, how can you do that? And of course, if you've been helping people pass the exam as long as I have, or if you've been breaking the information down the way that my mind breaks the information down, and you've come to every course that I've ever done since I started, and then you're kind of struggling with understanding the information, then we can kind of have a comparison of being like, yup, that's my standard. But your standard should be equivalent to where you're at. What is standard for you? What's the necessary for you? Because don't come in with an arrogant lens of, I've already accomplished enough. I got a 4.0. I've done all of these things leading up to this. Because this exam doesn't care what you look like. This exam doesn't care what you think. This exam doesn't care what you are coming from. This exam doesn't care about anything besides, are you able to stay in the moment to break down these questions and not have a breakdown because you aren't actually able to do what you decided that you wanted to do. So hopefully that was helpful for everybody. Hopefully everybody is still doing well. Like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. I know that's not everybody's stroke, but that's just some things that have been on my mind, honestly. Take care of yourself. Take care of the people you care about. Spend the time. And even though it may seem inconvenient, do the things that are necessary. Do the things that if things were to go to drastic, that you would be proud that you did. If things were to go 100% south in your life and everything negative could happen, would you be able to wake up and say, I did everything that I could? I did everything that represented 100% of who I am with and for the situation. Because if you can do that, regardless of what happens in your life, you'll at least know that you're doing what you think is right. Because that's what I always say. It's not what you do that makes you who you are. It's who you are while doing it. Keep pushing, keep driving, keep doing the next right thing, and you could do this. Because even though it may seem tough, even though it may seem like it's not worth it, it may seem like it's your back is against the wall and there's so many obstacles and barriers. Those obstacles and barriers are timestamps that may be preventing you from doing things that may actually drastically change your life that would not allow for you to change the lives of people that you need to. So like I said, hopefully you guys found that helpful. Like I said, if you need any assistance, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. Let's get into the questions, break these cats down, and not just get your mental right, but let's get you inside of the mindset of how to break these questions down. But before we get into the questions, do me a favor. Do not expect to get these all right. Do not expect to beat yourself up. And what I mean by that is like, what do you mean I'm expecting to beat myself up? Because if you have the tendency of going negative when you get something wrong, that's an opportunity to learn. That's the opportunity to say, why am I holding myself to that standard? Dig down to the roots, uproot it, and plant a more positive seed. So like I said, don't expect to get these all right. Not that I don't think you're intelligent or gifted or talented, but I don't want you to shoot yourself down. I don't want you to focus on the losses. I want you to focus on the things that you can earn and the lessons and blessings within it. So with that said, let's do it. Let's get into it. And again, do not second guess, do not add, do not take away, and trust your process to go into the exam, to kick it directly in the chest, to get the job done. So on the left-hand side, there is going to be the acronym box, the acronym that I recommend people to utilize on application questions. Safety, feelings, assess, refer, educate, advocate, facilitate, and intervene. Underneath of that is going to be the types of questions that we can see. Recall questions, which this video is not going to have any recall questions, as well as the difference between an application as well as a reasoning question. However, never assume anything about a particular question based on the fact that the details of the question are going to determine what type of question that we are looking at. So let's start with question 1. A social worker in a private practice is meeting with a 19-year-old female around concerns of excessive worry and episodes of depression. The woman reports that her friend completed suicide last month and that she's not been coping the best with it. The woman reports that she finds it difficult to get out of bed, avoids phone calls from friends, and has been neglecting her activities of daily living. The social worker asks the woman how she's been coping with her mental health symptoms, and the woman informs the social worker that she's been drinking alcohol and having increased amounts of sex. What should the social worker do first in this situation? A. Assess the woman for suicidal ideations to gauge the likelihood that she will complete suicide. B. Provide information to the woman on the stages of grief to validate what she has been experiencing. C. Work with the woman to identify goals for treatment to prioritize the different presenting issues in her life. D. Gather more information regarding the woman's alcohol use to ensure that she is safe. So let's break this down, see what we're looking at. We are a social worker in a private practice, so that's who we are and where we are at. Meeting with a 19-year-old female, so that is our client, around concerns of excessive worry and depression. Those are her two presenting issues. The woman reports that her friend completed suicide last month and that she's not been coping the best with it. Any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at this given moment. Her friend completed suicide last month. The woman reports that she finds it difficult to get out of bed, avoids phone calls from her friends, and has been neglecting her activities of daily living. Those are the responses from her friend completing suicide last month. The social worker asks the woman how she's been coping with her mental health symptoms, and the woman informs the social worker she has been drinking alcohol and having increased amounts of sex. So those are her two coping skills at this given moment. What should the social worker do first in this situation? First, next, best, and most all mean the same thing. So do not let somebody convince you that that one word is going to give you the answer. Do not do it, because way too many people see that one word and then they just start getting ideas in their head. Details of the question are going to tell you what we need to be looking at with and for this situation. So this is going to be an application question. Why? Because it's a client scenario that we have to react to in the best way that we know how. So let's apply the acronym to each answer choice. Back to the question to see what we're looking at. A, assess the woman for suicidal ideations to gauge the likelihood that she will complete suicide. So that one is going to be a safety assess. Safety, why? Because it's a potential safety issue. Assess, because we're gathering clinical data and will allow the question to determine whether it's actually a safety or not. B, provide information to the woman on the stages of grief to validate what she has been experiencing. This one is going to be educate. Why? Because we're providing her information that she can utilize in the session today. C, work with the woman to identify goals for treatment to prioritize the different presenting issues in her life. This one is going to be feelings. Why? Because it's getting her direct perspective of where she would like to go in treatment. And some of you might be like, man, Phil, it says work with. We don't answer questions based on the first part of the answer. We have to follow it all the way through because we're getting her perspective of where she would like to go. D, gather more information regarding the woman's alcohol use to ensure that she is safe. This one is going to be a safety assess. Safety, why? Because it's a potential safety issue. Assess, why? Because we're gathering clinical data. But we'll let the question determine what we need to see in a second. So let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. So, quick review. Social worker, private practice. That's who we are, where we're at. 19-year-old female around concerns of excessive worry and episodes of depression. No length of time of how long we've been working with her. But based on the question, we can imagine that it is the first session, because the woman reports her friend completed suicide last month. Any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So would have known if we'd been working with her, whether her friend completed suicide or not, but we're imagining that this is an intake assessment, and she's not been coping the best with it. Again, we're not just buying time and being like, okay, I just need to stay with the quote. Why? Because we have to stay in the lane. She also reports that her friend finds it difficult to get out of bed, avoids phone calls from her friends, and has been neglecting her activities of daily living. So that is her response to her friend completing suicide last month. Social worker asks the woman how she's been coping with her mental health symptoms. And the woman informs social worker she's been drinking alcohol and having increased amounts of sex. So those are the coping skills that she has in relation to difficulty of getting out of bed, avoiding phone calls from her friends, and neglecting her activities of daily living. We could imagine those are beginning symptoms of depression. But keep all that in mind as we go through each answer choice. So right off the bat, we're going to rule out A and take out the safety component. Why? Because nowhere in the question does it identify that she has any risk factors for suicide or that she wants to complete suicide. Her friend completed suicide, yet this individual has no motivation. And you may say, Phil, that's kind of assuming, isn't it? Well, if she's willing to tell you all these details, we're not just going to immediately be like, okay, you probably want to complete suicide because she already told you her coping skills, drinking alcohol and having increased amounts of sex. There's nothing in the question that would make us think that she wants to complete suicide. We're also going to rule out B. Why? Nowhere in the question does it state that she wants to start grieving the death of her friend. Her friend did complete suicide last month, but we cannot just jump to conclusions and be like, boom, this is what we got to do. Stay in our lane. We're now in between C, work with the woman to identify goals for treatment to prioritize the presenting issues in her life, or D, gather more information regarding the woman's alcohol use to ensure that she is safe. Let's look back at the question to make sure we're not making a mistake. Social worker in a private practice is meeting with, so that's where, again, that's the length of time that we're looking at. So we're imagining that this is an intake assessment, 19-year-old female, excessive worry, and episodes of depression. Friend completed suicide last month, so that is a huge stressor. She says she's not coping the best with it, but we're not jumping like a cat that got squirted with water and saying, this is it, because we got to stay focused on the question. She finds it difficult to get out of bed, avoids phone calls from the friends, and neglecting her activities of daily living. That is going to be equatable to the episodes of depression that she has cited. The social worker asked the woman how she's been coping, and she's like, you know what? I've been drinking alcohol and having increased amounts of sex. So for that reason, we're going to rule out D. Why? Because D is telling her your alcohol use must be the primary issue here. So that's where we're going to start. Why? Because it's only talking about her alcohol use. Yet, she's been drinking alcohol and having increased amounts of sex. So we're not just going to assume and be like, yep, sex is the normal coping skill for you and drinking alcohol is the problematic behavior. And just because it says substance use doesn't mean that we just automatically have to rule it out willy-nilly. So the correct answer here is going to be C, work with the woman to identify goals for treatment. Why? Because that is where she is at in that given moment. We're completing an intake assessment with her, so we're not just going to assume, jump to conclusions, get ourselves riled and dialed up and say, you know what? I know what's best for you. So A is incorrect because nowhere in the question does it talk about suicidality. And even though it's like episodes of depression, don't we want to rule that out? Well, that's going to distract from where the client actually wants to go with and for their situation. B is incorrect because she doesn't identify that she wants to start grieving the death of her friend at this given moment. And D is incorrect because it only focuses on one behavior, the alcohol use, versus the increased amounts of sex, difficulty getting out of bed, avoiding the phone calls from friends, neglecting her activities of daily living, and we still need to get more information related to that, what she means about excessive worry. So C is going to meet her where she's at. So the correct answer here is C. Work with the woman to identify goals for treatment to prioritize the different presenting issues in her life. So that's how we look at that question in particular. Question 2. A social worker in a private practice has been working with a 45-year-old military man for the past 4 months regarding relationship issues. The man was previously in an abusive relationship and finds it difficult to set boundaries with others. The man's ex-wife filed for a no-contact order against him after their divorce 2 years ago. During the most recent session, the man reports that he went to his ex-wife's house and that she called the police on him. The man reports that he may need to go to the hospital because his ex-wife no longer wants him. What should the social worker do next in this situation? A. Gather information regarding why the man went to his ex-wife's house. B. Gather information regarding why the man feels like he needs to go to the hospital. C. Complete a petition for involuntary hospitalization to ensure that the man is safe. D. Facilitate discussion around the man's perspective of his current situation to better understand how we would like to proceed in treatment. Let's see what we're looking at here. Social worker, private practice, that's who we are, where we're at, working with a 45-year-old military man. So that is our client for the past 4 months. Any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So 4 months, rapport, and we've been working with them and collaborating with them regarding relationship issues. So that's what brought him into treatment. The man was previously in an abusive relationship and finds it difficult to set boundaries with other people. So boundary setting and abuse are presenting issues at this moment. The man's ex-wife filed for a no-contact order against him after their divorce 2 years ago. Any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So his ex-wife, no contact order 2 years ago. He's been divorced 2 years. During the most recent session, any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at this given moment. So what's going on right now? The man reports that he went to his ex-wife's house and that she called the police on him, which would make us think, okay, no contact order. That's why she called the police. Man reports that he may need to go to the hospital because his ex-wife no longer wants him. What should the social worker do next? First, next, best, most, and should all mean the same thing. So do not let one word dictate how you answer the question. Allow for the details to paint the picture of what we're looking at. This is going to be an application question. Why? Because it's a client scenario that we have to react to in the best way that we know how. So let's apply the acronym to the answer choices and each answer choice back to the question to see what we're looking at in particular. A, gather information regarding why the man went to his ex-wife's house. This one is going to be an assess. Why? Because it's gathering clinical data consistent with his treatment goal of relationship issues. B, gather information regarding why the man feels like he needs to go to the hospital. This one is going to be feelings. Why? Because it's getting his direct perspective of what's going on with and for his situation. C, complete a petition for involuntary hospitalization to ensure the man is safe. This one is going to be a safety intervene. Safety, why? Because there's a potential safety issue. Intervene, why? Because it's an action on our end to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. D, facilitate discussion around the man's perspective of his current situation to better understand how we'd like to proceed in treatment. This one is going to be a feelings. Why? Because it's getting his direct perspective of where he would like to go with and for his situation. Let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. So, quick review. Social worker, private practice. That's who we are, where we're at. 45-year-old military man. That's our client. 4 months. Any length of time. Hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at regarding relationship issues. That's what brought him in 4 months ago. Man was previously in an abusive relationship and finds it difficult to set boundaries with other individuals. The man's ex-wife filed for a no-contact order against him after the divorce 2 years ago. Any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at during the most recent session. Any length of time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So what's going on right now? The man reports that he went to his ex-wife's house, even though there's a no-contact order. She called the police. Bad moves, bad vibes. Man reports that he may need to go to the hospital because his ex-wife no longer wants him. So keep all that in mind as we go through each answer choice. So right off the bat, we're going to rule out C. Why? Nowhere in the question does it state that he's a danger to himself, danger to other people, abuse, neglect, vulnerable individual, or psychosis in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, we are not going to put the person in the hospital. And you may say, Phil, we can hospitalize somebody if there's abuse and or neglect of a vulnerable individual. Depending on the severity of it and why they are harming the individual, we possibly could. Because if somebody is manic, somebody is exhibiting psychosis, etc., that may be a hospitalizable instance with and for their situation. We're also going to rule out B. Why? He already stated that he may need to go to the hospital because his wife no longer wants him. What are we going to ask further than that? Why do you think your wife doesn't want you? Because they've been divorced 2 years and she has a no contact order. It's kind of like, why would we ask him why he needs to go to the hospital because, again, clients don't get to determine whether they get to go to the hospital or not. Hospitalization only occurs when danger to self, danger to others, or psychosis in some way, shape, or form. Because if you were to walk up to the hospital today and you're not exhibiting suicidal ideations with plans, means, intent to complete, then they're going to turn you away. Or if you're coming to the hospital and you're not exhibiting homicidal ideations with plans, means, intent of actually executing on the plan that you've identified, they're going to turn you away because the intention component of safety is going to be the most important part within the situation. Now we're in between A, gather information regarding why the man went to his ex-wife's house, or D, facilitate discussion around the man's perspective of his current situation to better understand how we'd like to proceed. Let's look back at the question to make sure we're not making a mistake. Came in for relationship issues 4 months ago, previously in an abusive relationship, finds it difficult to set boundaries, finds it difficult to set boundaries, finds it difficult to set boundaries. The man's ex-wife filed for a no-contact order against him after the divorce 2 years ago, so it's been 2 years, still struggles with boundaries. And then he went to the ex-wife's house, even though there's a no-contact order, assumably because he finds it difficult to set boundaries with people. And now he's like, you know what? I feel rejected by my ex-wife. I need to go to the hospital, even though they've been divorced for 2 years and there's no contact order. So are we going to say, you know what? What made you go to your ex-wife's house? Or do we want to identify, okay, so you're a military man. You are now facing criminal charges because you went against a no contact order. That could potentially lose your military benefits. In addition to that, you're now experiencing rejection and it's bringing up a lot of things. So for that reason, we're going to rule out A. Why? Because we don't need to know why he went to his ex-wife's house. We already know that he went, so we have to react based on that. Because if you're like, man, why did you go to the ex-wife's house? You know what? I just wanted to get back with her. There's a no contact order and they've been divorced 2 years and he struggles with boundaries and there's relationship issues. So there's a lot bigger fish to fry than tell me why you went to your wife's house. So we're going to go with D. Where do you want to go from here? Because there's a lot of things going on in your life and you're likely going to be exhibiting and experiencing a lot of changes. So what does this look like in particular for you at this given moment? So the correct answer here is D, facilitate discussion around the man's perspective of his current situation to better understand how we'd like to proceed in treatment. A is incorrect because we don't need to know why, because he already did it and now he's facing some criminal charges because, again, the police were called. C is incorrect because we're not just going to initiate involuntary. We would do voluntary, but at that given moment, there has to be imminent danger to self, others, or psychosis in some way, shape, or form. So the correct answer here is D, facilitate discussion around the man's perspective of his current situation to better understand how he would like to proceed in treatment. So that's how we'd look at that question in particular. Question 3. A social worker in an outpatient clinic has been working with a 19-year-old female for the past 3 months regarding issues she has with self-esteem. The woman has had multiple plastic surgery operations to help herself feel more wanted by the men in her life. The woman experienced multiple sexual assaults throughout her childhood, and it impacts her ability to set boundaries with people in her life. The social worker receives a phone call from an anonymous caller informing him that his client was prostituting herself and doing cocaine this past weekend. During the most recent session, the woman appears lethargic. What would be the best thing for the social worker to do in this situation? A, inquire about the woman's past weekend to gauge the validity of the call that he received about her. B, inform the woman that she would need to complete a urine analysis as a requirement of treatment to gauge the validity of the call that he received about her. C, inform the woman about the call that he received and gather her perspective of it. D, facilitate discussion around what the woman would like to discuss in therapy today to ensure he meets her where she's at. So let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. Social worker, outpatient clinic, that's who we are and where we are at, working with a 19-year-old female. So that is going to be our client past 3 months. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it also paints the picture of what we're looking at regarding issues she has with self-esteem. The woman has had multiple plastic surgery operations to help herself feel more wanted by men in her life, which would tie into the self-esteem. Woman experienced multiple sexual assaults throughout her childhood, and it impacts her ability to set boundaries with people in her life. Any like the time, hop on top of it because it also paints the picture of what we're looking at. She's 19, so previous to this, she experienced multiple sexual assaults, and the social worker receives a phone call from an anonymous caller informing him that his client was prostituting herself and doing cocaine this past weekend. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it also paints the picture of what we're looking at. So during the most recent session, and you like the time, hop on top of it because it also paints the picture of what we're looking at right now. The woman appears lethargic. What would be the best thing for the social worker to do in this situation? First, next, best, most, and should all mean the same thing. So do not let that one word dictate how you answer this question. This question is going to be an application question. Why? Because it's a client scenario that we have to react to in the best way that we know how. So let's apply the acronym to each answer choice back to the question to see what we're looking at in particular. A, inquire about the woman's past weekend to gauge the validity of the call that he received about her. This one is going to be an assess, but also bad moves, bad vibes, and let the question determine that in just a second. It's assess because it's gathering clinical data to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. B, inform the woman that she would need to complete a urine analysis as a requirement of treatment to gauge the validity of the call that he received about her. This one is going to be an intervene. In bad moves, intervene. Why? Because it's an action on our end to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. Bad moves, we'll let the question determine that in just a second. C, inform the woman about the call that he received and gather her perspective of it. This one is also going to be intervene, but also bad moves, bad vibes. Intervene because it's an action on our end to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. And we'll let the question determine why it's bad moves in just a second. D, facilitate discussion around what the woman would like to discuss in therapy today to ensure he meets her where she is at. This one is going to be feelings. Why? Because it's getting the client's perspective of where they would like to go with and for their situation. So let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. So, quick review. Social worker, outpatient clinic. That's who we are, where we're at. 19-year-old female is our client, past 3 months. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it always paints the picture of what we're looking at. So there's some rapport, treatment goals, and some collaboration together. She came in 3 months ago related to issues she has with self-esteem. She has had multiple plastic surgery operations to help herself feel more wanted by men in her life, which ties into the self-esteem. The woman experienced multiple sexual assaults throughout her childhood. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it always paints the picture of what we're looking at. So she's 19, so we're not sure how far ago this was, but childhood is very frequent and recent, and it impacts her ability to set boundaries with people in her life. So boundaries is kind of a situation she is trying to improve on. Social worker receives a phone call from an anonymous caller informing him that his client was prostituting herself and doing cocaine this past weekend. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it all paints the picture of what we're looking at this given moment. So during the most recent session, and you like the time, hop on top of it because it all paints the picture of what we're looking at. So what's going on right now with all the factors previously described considered, the woman appears lethargic. So keep all that in mind as we go through each answer choice. So right off the bat, we are going to rule out A. Why? Because we're not just going to start off of like, man, how was your past weekend to gauge the validity of somebody that's not our client, that's somebody that's not our client, that's somebody that's not our client, because it's an anonymous caller and we are never, ever able to bring in outside information into sessions because we have to meet our clients where they are at. And if they are not directly telling us the information, we're not able to utilize it in any way, shape, or form. So this situation would be like, hey, tell me about your past weekend. Everything was great. And then you're trying to dig a hole to see if she's utilizing substances and prostituting herself. We're also going to rule out B. Why? Because nowhere in the question does it state that she's ever had a urine analysis in the past 3 months. That's why any length of time, hop on top of it because it also paints the picture of what we're looking at. So we've never given this individual a urine analysis in the past 3 months. Why? Because it's not described in the question. Her presenting issue is not substance use. So we are not just going to be randomly like, you know what? Need you to pee in this cup today, just so that way I can see how you're doing. It's not her treatment goal. We have to stay focused with all of the details considered. Her presenting issue is self-esteem. She's had multiple sexual assaults, difficulty setting boundaries, and now she is appearing lethargic. There could be many reasons why people are appearing lethargic or tired. So now we're in between C, inform the woman about the call he received and gather her perspective of it. Or D, facilitate discussion around what the woman would like to discuss in therapy today to ensure he meets her where she's at. Not even having to look back at the question, because we're going to rule out C. Why? Because we are not going to be like, hey, I received a phone call from somebody. I don't even know who they are, but I heard you were prostituting yourself and doing cocaine. Is that true? Because we have to improve her ability to establish boundaries. And if we're overstepping our boundaries, aka not trusting her and letting her disclose what she thinks is relevant with and for her situation, we're not respecting her boundaries. We're overstepping and not emulating the fact that boundaries are important and that we are just going to utilize things against her in some way, shape, or form. Because let's say this is somebody that she doesn't even know. We're accusing our client of doing things that have never been described in the question. So for that reason, we're going to go with D, facilitate discussion around what the woman would like to discuss in therapy, because everybody has the right to self-determination unless they're danger to self, danger to others, abuse, neglect of a vulnerable individual. Since she's over the ages of 18 and doesn't have an intellectual disability, she can utilize substances and engage in sexual activity if she would like to, because she is an adult and has that right. If she was a minor, we'd have a different story, but we have to stay in our lane. So A is incorrect because we're not going to be like, hey, tell me about the past weekend and try digging something that's not in the open. B is incorrect because it's never been done before, and it would kind of hit our client like, why am I doing a urine analysis? And if, let's say, you did find that there was cocaine in the urine analysis, it's not a part of their treatment goals, and they have the right to self-determination. And then C is incorrect because we're not going to be like, hey, I received a phone call from Chap. What's going on here? So the correct answer here is D, facilitate discussion around what the woman would like to discuss in therapy today to ensure he meets her where she is at. So that's how we look at that question in particular. Question 4. A school social worker is meeting with a 12-year-old boy upon referral of his teacher for not completing his work. The boy reports he does not understand why his teacher wants him to talk with the social worker, since I'm trying my best considering everything I've been through. The social worker gathers information regarding the boy's comment, and he states that his father died of cancer and that everyone in his family has started using drugs to cope with the death. What is the most likely thing for the social worker to do in this situation to help the boy? A, inquire about the boy's home environment to understand if there are any signs of neglect to ensure that he is safe. B, ask the boy if he has started to use drugs to cope with his father's death to better understand the situation before proceeding. C, work with the boy to identify the impact his father's death has had on him. D, contact Child Protective Services regarding the neglect the boy has experienced to ensure that he is safe. Let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. School social worker, so that's who we are. Where we're at, we're in the school, meeting with a 12-year-old boy, so that is our client upon referral of his teacher. So it's not directly him coming to us on his own. We're not completing his work, so that's why the teacher referred him to us. Boy reports to our direct client that he does not understand why his teacher wants him to talk with the social worker, since I'm trying the best considering everything I've been through. So he's unsure why he's here, but he's still willing to engage. Social worker gathers information regarding the boy's comment, and he states his father died of cancer and that everyone in his family has started to use drugs to cope with the death. What is the most likely thing for the social worker to do in this situation to help the boy? First, next, best, most, and should all mean the same thing. So do not let that one word dictate how you're going to answer the question in any way, shape, or form. This is an application question. Why? Because it's a client scenario that we have to react to in the best way that we know how. So let's apply the acronym to each answer choice back to the question to see what we're looking at in particular. A, inquire about the boy's home environment to understand if there are any signs of neglect to ensure that he is safe. This one is going to be an assess, but also bad moves, bad vibes, and we'll let the question determine that in just a second. And if you want to, we can put a safety in here because there's a potential safety issue. B, ask boy if he has started to use drugs to cope with his father's death to better understand the situation before proceeding. This one is going to be a safety assess. Safety, why? Because it's a potential safety issue. Assess, why? Because we're gathering clinical data to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. C, work with the boy to identify the impact his father's death has had on him. This one is going to be feelings. Why? Because it's getting his direct perspective of what's going on with and for his situation. And even though it says work with, we're still getting his perspective. So do not let the first beginning part of the answer tell you what the answer should be. D, contact Child Protective Services regarding the neglect the boy has experienced to ensure he is safe. This one is going to be a safety intervene. Safety, why? Because there's a potential safety issue. Intervene, why? Because it's an action on the social worker's end to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. Let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. So, quick review. School social worker, so that's who we are, where we're at. We're in the school. 12-year-old boy, upon referral of his teacher, so the boy's not coming in on his own free will. We're not completing his work, so that's why the teacher referred him. The boy reports to our direct client that he does not understand why his teacher wants him to talk with the social worker, so he's kind of confused. And he is saying, since I've been trying my best considering everything I've been through, so he's identifying some resiliency. Social worker gathers information regarding the boy's comment. So it's like, what do you mean that you're doing the best that you can regarding everything that he's been through? And he states that his father died of cancer and that everyone in his family has started using drugs to cope with the death. So keep all that in mind as we go through each answer choice. So right off the bat, we're going to rule out A. Why? Nowhere in the question does it state that the boy's being neglected in any way, shape, or form. So if we ask this 12-year-old boy, what are things like at home? And he's like, great, everyone supports one another. We're not getting any information that we're particularly looking at with and for the situation. We cannot assume what's going on at home. Bad moves, bad vibes. You have to stay in the question. Do not jump like a cat that got squirted with water to an answer just because it says one word, such as safe. We're also going to rule out D. Why? Nowhere in the question does it identify that the boy has been neglected. And you may say, Phil, what are you talking about? He said everyone in his family has started using drugs. But who is everyone? Everybody, including the cat? We have no clue. So we need a little bit more information before we're like, pow. And you're like, yeah, Phil, that's what A says. Asking about the home environment and asking about substance use related to who's using drugs is not the same thing. You can't add to an answer to make it seem right. If the answer doesn't equate back to the question, it's not the correct answer. So now we're in between B, ask the boy if he's started to use drugs to cope with his father's death to better understand the situation before proceeding. C, work with the boy to identify the impact his father's death has had on him. So let's look back at the question to make sure we're not making a mistake. 12-year-old boy, so that's our client. Referral of his teacher, so that's who sent him, not completing his work. Boy reports that he's been doing the best that he can. And we're like, okay, what does that mean? So then we ask him a little bit more information. He states that his father died of cancer, 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 and everyone in his life has started to use drugs. So are we going to ask the boy, are you using drugs? Or are we going to acknowledge the fact that he said that his father passed away of cancer and that could have a negative impact on his situation? So for that reason, we're going to rule out the safety component and make it an assess and go with C. Why? Because if you pictured this scenario and you're talking to this 12-year-old boy and he's like, you know what? This is what happened within this situation. And then we're like, okay, are you using drugs? It's not meeting him where he's at in that given moment. So you have to make sure that the answer that you're going with equates back to what the question is saying. And you may say, Phil, it says work with. That's an intervention. Do not let the first word of the answer choice distract you from the big picture of what we're actually looking at. So keep that in mind as you're navigating the process. So A is incorrect because we're not going to be like, okay, so tell me about your home environment, because that must be where you're at that given moment, and identify where it's at and how that works. B is incorrect because we're going to assume that the 12-year-old boy is using drugs and there's a bigger fish to fry, such as the grief and the death of his father. And D is incorrect because we're not going to jump like a cat that got squirted with water and call the fire department based on the fact that there's not a fire and we have to establish rapport since it's our first time meeting with the 12-year-old boy. So the correct answer here is C, work with the boy to identify the impact his father's death has had on him to gain a sense of rapport and understanding of where he is at, and then we can branch out to other entities. The correct answer here is C, work with the boy to identify the impact his father's death has had on him. So that's how we look at that question in particular. Question 5. A social worker in a community mental health clinic has been working with a 45-year-old female for the past 3 months to help cope with the triggers related to a previous abusive relationship. During the intake assessment, the woman informed the social worker that she became so paranoid of being physically harmed that she would hide a razor blade in her mouth. Throughout treatment, the woman has been willing to explore the trauma that she experienced and has been utilizing strategies to cope with her triggers. During the most recent session, while the woman is talking, she appears to be getting hyper-aroused and angry. What is the best thing for the social worker to do in this situation? A, develop a plan with the woman to better handle her thoughts to ensure that everyone is safe. B, gather information around what the woman is currently experiencing to ensure that the social worker is not triggering her. C, provide information to the woman on trauma triggers and hyperarousal to allow for her to become better informed about what she is currently experiencing. D, redirect the woman's attention to something else and encourage her to utilize the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment. Let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at. In particular, social worker, community mental health clinic, that's who we are and where we are at, working with a 45-year-old female. So that is our client for the past 3 months. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at this given moment. So we have some working relationship with this individual to help cope with triggers related to previous abusive relationship. So that is important too. She was in a previously abusive relationship. During the intake assessment, and you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at this given moment. So 3 months ago, that's why it's important to adhere to the time, the woman informed the social worker that she became so paranoid of being physically harmed that she would hide a razor blade in her mouth. So she's made adaptations to her behavior so that way if somebody's trying to abuse her or harm her, she can utilize the razor blade to protect herself. Throughout treatment, and you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So 3 months, or throughout the past 3 months, the woman has been willing to explore the trauma that she experienced and has been utilizing strategies to cope with her triggers. So she's been identifying the different behaviors that have been going on. She's exploring the trauma, aka the previous abusive relationship, and ways to cope with her triggers to not become hyper-aroused and harm anybody or herself. During the most recent session, and you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at this given moment. While the woman is talking, she appears to be getting hyper-aroused and angry. What's the best thing for the social worker to do in this situation? First, next, best, most, should all mean the same thing. So do not let that one word dictate how you answer the question. Stay locked and loaded into what the details are actually saying, not assuming, not jumping to conclusions, not getting yourself riled and dialed up. This is going to be an application question. Why? Because it's a client scenario that we have to react to in the best way that we know how. So let's apply the acronym to each answer choice back to the question to see what we're looking at in particular. A, develop a plan with the woman to better handle her thoughts to ensure that everyone is safe. This one is going to be a safety intervene. Safety, why? Because it's a potential safety issue. Intervene, why? Because it's an action on the social worker's end to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. B, gather information around what the woman is currently experiencing to ensure that the social worker is not triggering her. This one is going to be a feelings. Why? Because it's entertaining what she's currently going through with and for a situation, but it's also bad moves, bad vibes, and we'll let the question determine that in just a second. C, provide information to the woman on trauma triggers and hyperarousal to allow for her to become better informed about what she is currently experiencing. This one is going to be educate. Why? Because it's us providing information that she can utilize in the session today, but also bad moves, bad vibes. Why? Because we'll let the question determine that in just a second. D, redirect the woman's attention to something else and encourage her to utilize the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment. This one is going to be an intervene. Why? Because it's an action on the social worker's end to help progress the therapeutic process in some way, shape, or form. Let's look back at the question to see what we're looking at in particular. So, quick review. Social worker, community mental health clinic, that's who we are and where we're at. 45-year-old female is our client, 3 months. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at this given moment to help cope with triggers related to a previous abusive relationship. So she's been doing some trauma work for 3 months during the intake assessment. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So 3 months ago, the woman informed the social worker that she became so paranoid of being physically harmed that she would hide a razor blade in her mouth throughout treatment. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at. So for the past 3 months, because that's how long she's been in treatment, the woman has been willing to explore the trauma that she experienced, the previous abusive relationship, and has been utilizing strategies to cope with her triggers during the most recent session. And you like the time, hop on top of it because it helps paint the picture of what we're looking at right now, what's going on right now. While the woman is talking, she appears to be getting hyper-aroused and angry. So keep all that in mind as we go through each answer choice. So right off the bat, we're going to rule out B. Why? Because the situation is not about us. We've been working with this individual for 3 months, so we're not going to be like, okay, so tell me what I'm doing to potentially trigger you within this situation. In addition to that, she appears to be getting hyper-aroused and angry. And if you think about somebody that's hyper-aroused, they're almost kind of like in a dissociative type state, and they're not really focusing on the rational moment at this given moment. So we're not going to be able to engage with somebody that's hyper-aroused and potentially getting angry and saying, is it my fault? What should I change about me? It's not about us. Based on the fact that when individuals experience trauma, it can trigger all these different entities such as hyperarousal, anger, flashbacks, dissociative states, etc. So we're not going to say, is it all about me? Even though we've been working with this person for 3 months. And based on what this is saying, this is the first time. Stay in our lane. We're also going to rule out C. Why? Because she's been working with us for 3 months, and we're not going to say, hey, let me start telling you about trauma triggers and hyperarousal to allow for you to become better informed. Why? Because she came in to start coping with triggers related to an abusive relationship. So that's what we have been doing for the past 3 months. That's what we've been doing for the past 3 months. Why? Because she's also been utilizing strategies to cope with triggers. So therefore, C is just being like, okay, let me just jump with my cape on and educate you because you probably haven't been engaged in treatment and I know what's best for you. Bad moves, bad vibes. Now we're in between A, develop a plan with the woman to better handle her thoughts to ensure that everyone is safe. D, redirect the woman's attention to something else and encourage her to utilize the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment. So let's look back at the question. She's been with us for 3 months, so rapport, and she's collaboratively working with us. She's wanting to cope with triggers related to a previous abusive relationship, so there's trauma in the midst. During the intake assessment, she said she would become paranoid, physically aggressive because she has a razor blade in her mouth for a protective factor, so she may have the razor blade in her mouth at this moment, but she's not cut us in the past 3 months, so that's where we have to be mindful. She's been willing to explore the trauma, and she is willing to also utilize strategies to cope with her triggers. So do we want to develop a plan to better handle her thoughts, or do we want to redirect her attention, engage her, and then empower her to utilize the strategies that she's utilized in treatment? So for that reason, we're going to take out the safety component. Why? Because there's no imminent or foreseeable danger. It doesn't say that she's having thoughts or intrusive thoughts or command hallucinations. It just appears to be that she's getting hyper-aroused and angry, but we have no idea what's going on in her mind. So we're going to be like, okay, so how do we calm you down so that way you don't whip out the razor blade and slice my neck open, even though in the past 3 months you've never done that? And we've been talking about this trauma, which is sensitive information and behavior. So that's where we have to stay in our lane and identify what's going on with and for the situation versus just jumping like a cat that got squirted with water. So for that reason, we're going to rule out A, even though it says safe, because it's not an imminent or foreseeable danger situation. We have to utilize all the details on the question, not just one of them. So the correct answer here is D, redirect the woman's attention to something else. Why? Because when people become hyper-aroused or get in a dissociative state, having them ground themselves or reorient themselves to the moment of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, maybe breathing techniques, etc., can help the individual to de-escalate and be more mindful in the moment. And in addition to that, we're going to encourage her to utilize the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment. Why? Because the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment were how she can cope with the triggers that she is experiencing. Why? Because that was her purpose for coming in. She's been doing the dang thing in the work. So why would we not empower our client to do something that could be helpful for them with and for their situation? So A is incorrect because nowhere in the question does it identify that she would be a danger to herself or danger to us in any way, shape, or form. B is incorrect because we're not going to be like, okay, is it about me? Because we need to focus on our client and what they're going through with and for their situation. C is incorrect because we're not going to be like, okay, I have more knowledge than you. How about you start applying these skills even though you have the information and been doing the dang thing for 3 months? Allow for your client to be the key component of whether they change or not. So the correct answer here is D, redirect the woman's attention away because she's hyper-aroused. We need to de-escalate and get her reoriented, and encourage her to utilize the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment. So that way we can kind of empower her and allow for her to build on the things that she's been doing in treatment. So the correct answer here is D, redirect the woman's attention to something else and encourage her to utilize the strategies that were previously discussed in treatment. So that's how we look at that question in particular. Hopefully that was helpful for everybody and gives you a better idea of, one, not just how you can break down the questions, but two, not assume, not jump to conclusions, not get yourself riled and dialed up, not go with what they say, but build yourself up. Because again, if you're going through something, don't let it be something that's a detrimental component to your process. Take it as a lesson and blessing, because when you start viewing things more positively, you start getting more positive results. And if you have negativity or negative situations going on in your life, it doesn't always equate to the fact that it's going to be a negative result, because the way that you react to things is how it's going to be determined at the end of the day. So again, do the necessary, build yourself up, identify what you need with and for your situation. Don't always go with what they say. Do what you think is right, and everything will work out. Like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate every single one of you guys. If you need anything, send me an email at berda24@gmail.com. Hope to see you in the Sunday study groups. Hope to see you in the individual tutoring. Hope to see you in the one-day course. Hope to see you in the next free study group as well. I'll provide the dates and information about that at a later time. But like I said, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of you guys. Spend the time with the people that matter to you. Spend the time in the way that you want to, and don't let one thought, one situation, one person, or anybody take you outside of what you know to be true. You're amazing. You're uniquely gifted and talented, but don't let the measurement of somebody else, or don't let the experience of somebody else take away from the beauty of what you got, because you are on a different path than everybody. You have a different mission than everybody, but never forget why you started. Never forget why you're doing the things that you're doing, even though you may not be getting the results. Don't let that taint everything that you've been doing, because you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Like I said, take care, be safe, keep building yourself up. Go into the exam, kick it directly in the chest to get the job done. You need anything from me, drop me a shout. But for now, I'm getting the heck out of here. I'll see you in the next video. In peace out, guys.